Chapter 951, Liking Dao Domain. On behalf of her master to greet the third imperial uncle? The palace was filled with important figures from the Luo clan and the alliance. They were stunned when they suddenly heard Shui Ningxuan's words. Regardless of Shui Ningxuan's bearing or the nomological fluctuations around her, they were all stunning. Such a woman's looks and strength were impeccable. She even had a bearing that placed her a cut above the rest, so how could she be willing to be a slave to others? How magnificent would one be to have a woman slave like her? Could it be? People began to guess, and this guess left them stifled. At this moment, the third imperial uncle cupped his hands and said, "Fairy Ningxuan, you must be joking. I can't afford Felicitous Reign Lord's greetings. I should be the one greeting Felicitous Reign Lord." The third imperial uncle's words affirmed what everyone had in their minds. People drew a gasp. The woman's master was indeed Felicitous Reign Lord. Fairy Ningxuan. I recall who she is. 50,000 years ago, Fairy Ningxuan had once traversed the 10,000 Fey empyrean heaven, making a name for herself. However, it was ephemeral. She soon disappeared because she had returned to Felicitous Reign Lord's side and seldom appeared. Rumors say that Fairy Ningxuan was saved by Felicitous Reign Lord when she was still a young girl. Back then, Felicitous Reign Lord had yet to become a divine lord. He was impressed by her intelligence and extraordinary constitution, keeping her by his side. Therefore, Fairy Ningxuan has always been a follower of Felicitous Reign Lord, tending to his daily needs. Fairy Ningxuan is extremely clever, so by serving Felicitous Reign Lord, her strength has already reached an unfathomable stage. Shui Ningxuan was Felicitous Reign Lord's maidservant, so she naturally called Felicitous Reign Lord Master. It was not that an impressive woman like her was willing to be a slave, it was because she had gone from an ordinary maidservant to her present stage. So that was the reason why the third imperial uncle had presided over the national banquet. His invitation of all heroes from various nations was because of Shui Ningxuan's arrival. With Shui Ningxuan's identity, she naturally could become the star of the national banquet. Of course, Yiyun was also the junior that the third imperial uncle wanted to introduce to Shui Ningxuan. I wonder what Fairy Ningxuan is here in the Luo clan for? The third imperial uncle asked. This question was critical. After Yiyun defeated Qi Zhuiyun, Fairy Ningxuan's appearance could not help but cause others to have certain thoughts. This was apparent for the Luo clan clansmen. At this moment, they turned particularly excited as they held their breaths and looked at Fairy Ningxuan intently, waiting for her response. Could Fairy Ningxuan's appearance here imply that Felicitous Reign Lord had intentions of taking in Yiyun as a disciple? Shui Ningxuan said with a smile, "My trip here was not my master's intention. My master has been staying in the Oracle Fey Empire for the past few days while pondering over the laws. Since I had nothing better to do, Qi Zhuiyun's challenge of all the younger generation of the Alliance had sparked my interest, leading me here. After seeing the outcome of Qi Zhuiyun's battle, I was quite pleasantly surprised." Shui Ningxuan smiled at Yiyun as she said this. Yiyun got up and gave a Shui Ningxuan a bow. At this moment, Yiyun had become the focus of the banquet. Prince Crimson Firmament and Baiyu Qing were both sitting opposite Yiyun. As they looked at Yiyun, they felt their hearts turn somewhat sour. To Crimson Firmament, if Yiyun could become the disciple of Felicitous Reign Lord, it was a great thing for the Luo clan, but for him, it did not necessarily mean that it was good. This made him feel wry and bitter. Fairy Ningxuan, what do you think about Yiyun? Third imperial uncle asked in an extremely solemn voice. All these years, the third imperial uncle had been cultivating in the back mountains of the royal palace. Other than the invasion of the Fey Phantasm sect, very few things could stir him. I do not represent the views of Master. Fairy Ningxuan shook her head. Fairy, it's fine if it's just your personal opinion. Third imperial uncle said. Fairy Ningxuan had accompanied Felicitous Reign Lord for so many years, so she was probably one who knew Felicitous Reign Lord's judgment criteria. Yi Yun is not bad. Xu Ningxuan gave such an evaluation. Before the Luo clan could rejoice, there was a sudden turn in Xu Ningxuan's words. However, he has a very big problem. What problem is it? The members of the Luo clan felt their hearts tighten. If I'm not wrong, Yi Yun has yet to grasp his own Dao domain. Dao domain, Great Dao, Heavenly Dao, Origins. This were the four realms of Dao. A typical warrior would possess a Dao domain when they were at the Dao manifestation realm. However, for geniuses, it was common for them to have their own Dao domain at the Heaven Ascension realm. For example, Qi Zhuoyun had a Shura domain that turned the skies crimson. It enveloped millions of people and shocked everyone. Felicitous Rain Lord had approved of Qi Zhuoyun because of his Dao domain. Without a doubt, Felicitous Rain Lord had placed great emphasis on the Dao domain. This represented a genius's perception and nomological attainments. It determined one's future development to a large extent. However, Yi Yun apparently did not have a Dao domain. Third Imperial Uncle frowned slightly and he fell silent. Quite a number of people in the crowd present were surprised. Yi Yun does not have a Dao domain? That can't be. Gaining insights into a Dao domain should not be difficult for a top genius. Princess Xuer had comprehended a Dao domain more than 10 years ago. Back then, at the Luo Divine Hall trials, Princess White Fox's epiphany allowed her to possess her own Dao domain. Back then, Yi Yun had already lagged behind her, but he should not have lagged behind her for more than 10 years. Furthermore, Yi Yun's strength was obvious. He could defeat Qi Zhuoyun, so how could he not have his own Dao domain? In response to Fairy's words, this junior indeed has not comprehended a Dao domain. With Yi Yun saying this, all the guests were dumbfounded. He really didn't have one. Previously, in the challenge that Qi Zhuoyun made, the people who fought all had Dao domains. Some of the Dao domains might not have offensive power, but they were still Dao domains. Yi Yun did not use a Dao domain from the beginning to the end, making people believe that Yi Yun's Dao domain was unsuitable for battle. But now, it was because he did not even have one. Why was this so? Could Yi Yun have encountered a bottleneck in his nomological insights that he could not break through? It was obviously better the early one formed their Dao domain. There was room for future development. By delaying it for so long, Yi Yun's progress was already impaired. If he really had a bottleneck, it would be terrible. Bottlenecks were things that no one could tell when they could be broken through. This made everyone look at Yi Yun with worried looks. Especially the members of the Luo clan. They were worried that Yi Yun's weakness in Dao would make him slowly fail to catch up to top geniuses. After all, the Dao manifestation realm was extremely important. From Heaven Ascension into Dao manifestation, Dao fruits had to be condensed. The number and quality of the Dao fruits directly affected his future success. In the martial world, geniuses who reigned supreme in the Heaven Ascension realm would slowly be left behind because of their poor Dao fruit qualities. It was not uncommon for them to end up with their potentials being expended. Even if Yi Yun were to condense his Dao domain tomorrow, he was already at a greater disadvantage compared to Qi Zhuoyun and others. Xu Ningxuan nodded. You are at the Heaven Ascension perfection realm, but you have yet to condense your Dao domain. It is indeed slow. You are about to step into the Dao manifestation realm, so nomological insight is extremely important. Without a Dao domain, the Dao fruits that you condense would definitely be lacking in quality. If this goes on, you might begin to lag behind in the Dao manifestation realm. It would be very difficult to make up for it. Chapter 952, 10,000 Fei Divine Canon. Xu Ningxuan's words tightened the hearts of all the Luo clan clansmen present. Could it be that Yi Yun would not be able to become Felicitous Rain Lord's disciple? If that was the case, Yi Yun's growth would likely be affected. To the Luo clan, it would be a great loss. Yi Yun did not speak as he waited for Xu Ningxuan to continue. Shui Ningxuang sat down and she looked serene. She asked calmly, Yi Yun, I mentioned quite a bit a while ago, but I did not ask if you intend to become Felicitas Rain Lord's disciple? Yi Yun nodded. To a warrior with an extremely long lifespan, there was a wide range of realms to cross. A warrior could take many mighty figures as masters, and it was not considered to be a betrayal of the previous master. Indeed, Yi Yun had obtained the Azure Yang Lord's heritage in the past, but that was only a tiny portion of what the Azure Yang Lord had learned in his entire life. The most important cultivation technique inheritance was not left behind by Azure Yang Lord. What Yi Yun learned was the creation by the Azure Yang Lord's confidant, the ancient Great Empress's Great Empress Heart Sutra. To the present Yi Yun, the Great Empress Heart Sutra was already inadequate. He needed a stronger cultivation technique so it could match the 10,000 demon wheel of existence. Obtaining the inheritance and obtaining the face-to-face advice from a divine lord was completely different. Regardless of how high one's perception was, just cultivating from an inheritance manual still needed one's repeated experimentation and confirmation. Compared to having a master to guide them, they would end up taking more detours and waste more time. There was no need to mention the resources and status that one would gain after becoming a disciple of a divine lord. It would be the best protection for Yi Yun, as Yi Yun would not need to feel apprehensive when he faced the Fey Phantasm sect. My master values one's grade in the Tao greatly. To become my master's disciple, it is necessary to condense a Tao domain at the Heaven Ascension realm. If you do not have a Tao domain, it is impossible. Condense a Tao domain. Yi Yun faltered slightly. A pass is given as long as a Tao domain is condensed? If it's just an ordinary Tao domain, it would be meaningless. The reason why Qi Zhuiyun was able to be approved by Master was because his Tao domain was extraordinary. Qi Zhuiyun's Tao domain had managed to defeat an in-name disciple of my Master, thus he was recognized by him. In-name disciple? Yi Yun asked in surprise. Felicitas Rain Lord also had in-name disciples? That's right. Master has several in-name disciples. Although my master has never established a faction, he has several followers. Many things could not be done by him alone, so there is a need to delegate the job to others. Shui Ningxuan's explanation enlightened Yi Yun. The in-name disciples were probably similar to servants. Although they were called servants, they were most likely very talented. It was easier said than done to become a divine lord's servant. What my master wants to take in is a personal disciple. It is something that an in-name disciple cannot compare to in every aspect. Therefore, the requirements are naturally high. Although you have defeated Qi Zhuiyun, you must have something that can move my master to gain his approval. Master values perception, bloodline, and nomological Tao domain. Either your perception is amazing, allowing you to infer from incomplete supremacy grade cultivation techniques, or your Tao domain reaches the same standard as Qi Zhuiyun's, or finally, you possess a pure ancient Fey bloodline that reaches the standard like that lady over there. If you can meet any two of the three criteria, it would not be a problem to become Master's disciple. If you manage only one, it would be likely that you would gain my Master's approval, but it is not a sure thing. As Shui Ningxuang spoke, she looked at Luo Huier. The lady that she referred to was Luo Huier. She could sense an extremely rare purity in her bloodline, but Luo Huier was a rare genius in the Luo clan. In comparison, Yi Yun's bloodline was far from hers. As for perception, attempting to infer from an incomplete supremacy-grade cultivation technique, even if it was a tiny amount, would be extremely demanding. Finally, the Tao domain was very difficult as well. Qi Zhuiyun's attainment in his Tao domain was heaven-defying to begin with. Now, Yi Yun did not even have a Tao domain, so how could he compete with Qi Zhuiyun? And worst of all, he needed to accomplish two of the three criteria to ensure a pass. Accomplishing only one could still result in failure. Such criteria made many of the Luo clan clansmen feel a coldness in their hearts. Yi Yun's bloodline was lacking, and he did not have a Tao domain. As for perception, it didn't sound like something assuring. the chances of becoming Felicitas Reign Lord's disciple were extremely minute. Finally, was all that effort for naught? The people found it difficult to accept such an outcome. Felicitas Reign Lord's requirements were too high. Even a divine lord was so harsh on his selection of disciples. Xue Ningxuang apparently read the minds of the people as she slowly said, "Master naturally has his reasons for coming up with such a criteria. My master intends to hand his mantle over to the personal disciple he takes in this time. My master possesses the remnant page of the 10,000 Fei Empyrean Heavens 10,000 Fei Divine Canon. I believe that it is no longer a secret." When Xue Ningxuang said this, everyone looked at each other and they drew a cold gasp of air. The remnant page of the 10,000 Fei Divine Canon. When the primordial universe was first born from out of the chaos, the 12 Empyrean Heavens slowly evolved. There were mighty primordial figures who gained insight on the natural laws, slowly establishing martial arts heritages. The ultimate martial art heritages were regarded by warriors in the 12 Empyrean Heavens as divine canons, which were supreme techniques that approached the heavenly Tao. Maybe it was somewhat destined that every Empyrean Heaven produced a divine canon that approached the heavenly Tao at its birth. These 12 divine canons were seemingly the natural condensation of the world's great Tao, just like the divine Lord Royal Seals, which were naturally formed by every Empyrean Heaven. They had the power of creation. As for the 10,000 Fei Divine Canon, it was the divine canon that belonged to the 10,000 Fei Empyrean Heaven. The 12 divine canons were cultivation techniques, something that Yi Yun was lacking the most at present. Obviously, Yi Yun wanted to learn it. Yi Yun knew that the Azure Yang Lord had previously seen remnant pages of the Yang God Manual and the 9 Nether Sacred Manual. But unfortunately, none of the remnant pages had landed in Yi Yun's hands, and he had never seen them before. If not, with the Yang God Manual in his hand, his cultivation speed would have skyrocketed, so how would he always be lacking in energy, causing him to be apprehensive about using the 10,000 Demon Wheel of Existence? It's the 10,000 Fei Divine Canon. To think that Felicitas Reign Lord plans on teaching the 10,000 Fei Divine Canon, it's unknown how many geniuses will go mad for it. Even the third imperial uncle sighed. Who didn't want to learn the 10,000 Fei Divine Canon? A cultivation technique of that level was too distant for a faction like the Luo clan. If the Luo clan ever possessed the remnant pages of the 10,000 Fei Divine Canon, it would probably be annihilated as a result of it. The third imperial uncle looked at Yi Yun and sighed. He felt sorry for Yi Yun. It was normal for Felicitas Reign Lord to have such high criteria if he planned on taking in a disciple that would be imparted with the 10,000 Fei Divine Canon. However, such a big opportunity was terrible for Yi Yun. In Yi Yun's present situation, it was very unlikely that he would become a disciple of Felicitas Reign Lord. Xue Ningxuang looked at Yi Yun, seemingly feeling sorry for him. If a divine lord were to take in a disciple under normal circumstances, Yi Yun would be barely qualified, but now, he was still somewhat lacking. My master will stay in the Oracle Fei Empire for about a year. My master's taking in of a disciple will be decided during this period of time. If you think it's possible, come to the Oracle Fei Empire. Chapter 953, Yi Yun's Dao Domain. After Xue Ningxuang said this, a shadow began to envelop her, starting from her feet. Following that, her figure blended into the shadow as the shadow rapidly converged, disappearing completely in the blink of an eye. The ground was left empty, like nothing had been there previously. Seeing Xue Ningxuang disappear, the palace hall fell into silence. Many people looked at Yi Yun. Some frowned, while others felt a sense of regret. There were also people from other factions who were gloating at the turn of events. Fairy Ningxuang is simply being difficult. Someone from the Luo clan said unhappily. Do you think Fairy Ningxuang is someone that you can disparage? A dignified voice resounded. The person who spoke was the third imperial uncle. This time, Felicitas Reign Lord is planning on taking in a personal disciple, and it involves the inheritance of the 10,000 Fei Divine Canon, so it's natural for his standards to be very high. Don't forget that a Divine Lord's lifespan is extremely long. Felicitous Rain Lord hasn't become a Divine Lord for very long. He still has millions, if not tens of millions of years to choose a disciple. There's no hurry at all. Even if he can't find one, it wouldn't matter to him. He can just wait till he meets someone when fate permits it. Quality comes before quantity in this case, so Felicitous Rain Lord will definitely not lower his standards. Although the third imperial uncle felt sorry for Yi Yun, he knew that Fairy Ningxuan was definitely not making it difficult for Yi Yun. Instead, by doing so, it revealed how much importance Felicitous Rain Lord placed on his personal disciple. He was truly looking for someone to pass on the mantle to. With the third imperial uncle saying this, everyone fell silent. Indeed, a Divine Lord's standards were different from theirs. A Divine Lord could live for very long, allowing them to traverse countless worlds and see countless geniuses. To them, Yi Yun was already amazing enough, but if he was placed in the vast 10,000 Fei Empery in heaven and over millions of years? Even someone as amazing as Yi Yun might perhaps be nothing. Without a Dao domain, impressive perception, or an outstanding bloodline, it was indeed difficult to meet the Felicitous Rain Lord's requirements. The third imperial uncle said again, "Our Luo clan has existed for 100 million years. We do not need to sell ourselves short. Yi Yun, do you understand?" As the third imperial uncle said this, he looked at Yi Yun, apparently afraid that Yi Yun would suffer a setback. Yi Yun said with a smile, "This junior understands." After hearing the information provided by Shui Ningxuan, as the concerned party, Yi Yun did not have any wild mood swings. He was extremely calm, and this pleased the third imperial uncle greatly. By not being easily pleased or depressed, while still having a strong will and a steadfast heart for martial arts, a warrior like him could go even further. "Little Yun, why are you so calm? Aren't you a little bit disappointed?" Luo Hua asked Yi Yun. Yi Yun shook his head and said, "There's nothing much to be disappointed about. My martial path ultimately depends on myself." "What you said isn't wrong, but why haven't you gained insights into your own Dao domain all this time? I feel that shouldn't be the case with your nomological insights." With Luo Hua asking such a question, many people looked at Yi Yun. That's right, it's too strange that Yi Yun had yet to condense a Dao domain. From the Yuan opening realm, warriors began to grasp laws, and by the Dao manifestation realm, the laws would condense into Dao fruits. It was a qualitative leap. Yi Yun's laws were outstanding to begin with, so how could he lag behind his peers? There are some problems that I haven't managed to figure out. Yi Yun's response tightened the hearts of the members of the Luo clan. There was indeed a bottleneck? This junior wishes to request to enter the primordial space once again. Perhaps my Dao domain will be completed. Yi Yun said seriously. Yi Yun had yet to condense a Dao domain. The main reason was because Yi Yun's initial goal was set extremely high. He wanted to condense a destruction Dao domain. The Dao of Destruction was divided into the minor Dao of Destruction and the major Dao of Destruction. Yi Yun did not know which Dao of Destruction that the 10,000 demon wheel of existence was from, but his intuition told him that it was definitely not as simple as the minor Dao of Destruction. If it was the major Dao of Destruction, it was simply unthinkable. Condensing such a Dao domain was understandably difficult. Yi Yun's attempt was a crazy challenge, of course. If Yi Yun had condensed a pure Yang Dao domain during his 18 years in the primordial space, he would have condensed a pure Yang Dao domain long time ago. Pure Yang was also a great Dao law. A pure Yang Dao domain would be more powerful than Princess White Fox's lightning Dao domain, but Yi Yun did not do so. He placed all his efforts in the destruction Dao domain. Typical warriors only focused on one law, naturally being able to condense a single Dao domain. As for top geniuses, they were able to condense several Dao domains, but they were divided into major and minor Dao domains. The first Dao domain that would be condensed would be augmented by the heavenly Dao, resulting in it being the most powerful. However, due to the difficulty of it, even the first Dao domain condensed by a top genius would typically not be a great Dao domain. It would be one of the easier 5 elemental Dao, or the creational Dao. However, Yun had chosen the 10,000 demon wheel of existence's destruction Dao. The difficulty of doing so was imaginable. However, the purple crystal was something that Yun could rely on. Hence, he wanted to attempt such a crazy idea. Originally, Yun believed that he would be able to condense his destruction Dao domain in another 3 or 5 years. However, after the battle with Qi Zhuiyun, Yun had several new insights. He believed that if he returned to the primordial space again, he would have a chance of success. To the primordial space? Emperor Luo's eyebrows pricked up. The primordial space was in the Luo Divine Hall, and the Luo Divine Hall trials had already ended. Yet, Yun wanted to return to the primordial space again. Yun, you might not know, but to take you to the primordial Empyrean heaven now, it requires 10 times the amount of world stones. An elderly courtier of the Luo clan said. It was not a small figure. Oh? Yun was stunned. The Luo Divine Hall trials take place once every 60 years and they last for 18 years each time for a reason. Because after 18 years, the barriers to the primordial Empyrean heaven would become stronger. Tearing through them would require a greater price. The Luo clan courtier explained patiently. He already felt that Yun no longer had the chance to become Felicitas Reign Lord's disciple. Even if he returned to the primordial space, so what? The world stones could not be spent for nothing. They were all resources. Before Yun said another word, the third imperial uncle said, "Take him there. It's just entering the primordial space once. That bit of world stones is something that our Luo clan can afford. Even if he can't become Felicitas Reign Lord's disciple, it wouldn't matter. As long as it allows him to become stronger, the expenditure of those world stones would be worth it." The third imperial uncle's order was something that no one would refute. Many people from the younger generation of the Luo clan, including Prince Crimson Firmament, were jealous when they heard this. Yun was receiving top treatment. Even Crimson Firmament himself did not receive such treatment in the past. "Thank you, Senior," Yun said solemnly as he took a deep breath. He took note of the favor that was bestowed to him. The insights from the battle with Qi Zhuiyun needed to be digested back in the primordial space. As for the 10,000 demon wheel of existence, he needed to use the purple crystal Fei Godstone to verify it again. Yun believed that he would definitely have new insights this time. Chapter 954, Before one's heart reduced to mediocrity, great Tao lies within one's heart. In the nebulous primordial Empyrean heaven, the Luo clan's special spirit cruiser underwent a series of spatial traversals. With space suddenly fluctuating, it appeared above the Luo Divine Hall. When the doors opened, Yun walked out of the spirit cruiser. The last time he had done this, he had imitated the Shadow Twins' footwork, allowing him to find his footing in the space with chaotic laws. But this time, he simply stepped forward, and every step he made would produce a ripple. A bearded old man with a stoic face had already been waiting for him. "Elder Duanmu," Yun said with a bow. "I have already been informed." Elder Duanmu sized Yun up for a moment before saying, "You have improved once again since the trials." "Not bad." Elder Duanmu knew that Yun's talent was outstanding, but he never expected that Yun would be able to attain such achievements. Yun was really a person who constantly created pleasant surprises. It was indeed difficult to become Felicitas Reign Lord's personal disciple, and even the present Yun had minute hopes of being one. The primordial space has already been prepared for you. You have a year's time. Let's go. Elder Duanmu led the way by flying towards the Luo Divine Hall. When no one came to participate in the trials, the Luo Divine Hall would be like an ancient monument lying dormant in a forgotten world. It exuded an ancient and bleak aura. The elders of the Luo Divine Hall were in reclusion for tens of thousands of years. In order to pursue even great heights in martial arts, they had to endure a lot. Yi Yun reflected over it as he arrived at the primordial space with Elder Duanmu. Go ahead and start your reclusion. Does he want to condense his Dao domain in a year's time? It was unknown when Elder Shi appeared beside Elder Duanmu, as he asked while looking at the gigantic doors that sealed Yi Yun within the primordial space. That's right. Senior brother, what do you think of it? That child is very ambitious. If he wants to condense an ordinary Dao domain, it obviously wouldn't be difficult, but how can the Dao domain that he wants to condense be anything ordinary? A year's time is too short. Furthermore, he now has a year's time breathing down on his neck, so the tension makes it even harder. I have seen too many geniuses throughout my life. They set high ambitions for themselves, but they end up failing to achieve them. They only want to gain insights into the great Tao, and show disdain to the lesser Tao, but, during their meditations, they end up being led astray. To a warrior that gains insight into the worldly Tao, it is very common to deviate in the meditation process. Some people might even realize that their insights were wrong after many years, and that price paid for that would be terrible. Gaining insights into the laws and going astray wasn't that terrifying. The most terrifying thing was not knowing that one had gone astray. That would be dangerous. For a young genius like Yi Yun, there was no time for delays. Senior brother, do you mean that Yi Yun might go astray? There is a possibility. I'm just afraid of it happening. Elder Shi shook his head. With his talent, it is very out of the ordinary for him to not have gained insights into his Dao domain after so much time. Even a pure Yang Dao domain should have been condensed by now. Geniuses were prideful people. A top genius like Yi Yun would only have higher ambitions, but at times, that was not necessarily the best thing. What Dao domain did he want to condense? A pure Yang Dao domain? A Dao domain of the sword? Mastering one Dao domain would also result in enormous combat strength. For example, Qi Zhuiyun's Shura Dao domain was the condensation of his killing intent and will. It's pointless for us to fret here. Let's wait and see what happens in a year's time. Elder Duanmu said. A year's time was like a snap of the fingers to them. In the primordial space, Yi Yun arrived in front of the purple crystal Fei Godstone once again. This time, there was an even more obvious resonance between him and the purple crystal Fei Godstone. It had a feeling like their lifeblood was connected. Yi Yun faced the purple crystal Fei Godstone and he reached out his hand to touch it. Boom! Like he had instantly opened a door, Yi Yun's eyes glazed over as he arrived in a mental world. This time, the man or the Red Lotus woman were not seen in the mental world. There were only countless nomological fragments constantly shuttling through it. In the space, there were only nomological fragments, and the rest was all chaos. Yi Yun reached his hand out and gestured with it, causing a small nomological fragment to fly towards him. Following that, more nomological fragments flew towards Yi Yun like a flurry of snow. The first Dao pattern was completed, and immediately, the space had its first law. As he continued to construct them, the nomological fragments were constantly being condensed into Dao patterns. Yi Yun was immersed in his actions, while his mental energy was constantly being drained. Soon, the entire 10,000 demon wheel of existence was condensed by Yi Yun. The long-haired man in the purple crystal had formed a world with his spear, before shattering the world. Following that, he had merged the entire world's laws into the 10,000 demon wheel of existence. This was the Tao of destruction, and it was even more powerful than minor destruction. In the trial before, Yi Yun had attempted to copy the long-haired man's methods and he had used the 10,000 demon wheel of existence to help condense his own Dao domain, but he had failed. In the process of condensing his Dao domain, Yi Yun felt something unharmonious. This snag was something that he never managed to resolve. And in the battle with Qi Zhuiyun, Yi Yun had gained new insights as to where the feeling came from. Looking at the 10,000 demon wheel of existence, Yi Yun quietly stared at it. Suddenly, his eyes flashed with a beam of light. He pulled out his broken sword and slashed at the 10,000 demon wheel of existence. Ka-cha! The 10,000 demon wheel of existence had shattered, and it was reduced to countless nomological fragments. This was not the Tao that he was pursuing. The 10,000 demon wheel of existence was the long-haired man's lifelong martial technique, and there was no doubt with its profoundness. However, that was the long-haired man's Tao. Although Yi Yun had learned the 10,000 demon wheel of existence, he had learned it through mimicking it. It was not his own understanding. By copying the 10,000 demon wheel of existence exactly, he had learned a martial technique. But regardless of how profound it was only that and nothing more. Once he was restricted by this, how could he form his own Tao? Yi Yun brandished the broken sword and he shattered the flying Tao patterns. He tore them apart and reconstituted them from destruction. The 10,000 demon wheel of existence had been completely shattered into tiny nomological fragments. Ka-cha! In Yi Yun's mind, it was like there was a membrane that obstructed him, but it was shattered by the pure yang broken sword. There was still a year's time for him to go over the 18 years of insights. A light flashed in Yi Yun's eyes as he faced the countless random nomological fragments that appeared once again. Yi Yun thrust his sword out. The sword had destroyed, and what he wanted to condense was destruction. This was Yi Yun's sword of the will, which represented Yi Yun's martial heart and his obsession. He wanted to pursue the pinnacle of martial arts and go even further. Before one's heart reduced to mediocrity, great Tao lies within one's heart. Coming from the cloud wilderness and traversing through space, he had arrived in the wider 12 Empyrean heavens. From an ordinary mortal to a heaven ascension realm warrior, I can go even further. Lin Shintong, I will find you. Azure Yang Lord, I will avenge you. Sword beam after sword beam, they appeared like snowflakes, lighting up the entire space. Nomological fragments began to condense amidst the sword beams, condensing in a completely different way from the 10,000 demon wheel of existence. Yi Yun did not even think about how he was going to condense them. He slashed out freely as his heart willed, a heart of the sword. In the sword beams, Yi Yun emptied his body and soul, as he felt free. He felt like he was in a vast world, enjoying the process while engaging in swordplay. Boom! 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 The swishing of the sword produced sounds that resembled wargones or thunder. He had brandished his sword countless times, not knowing how much time had passed. He was repeatedly drained of all his energy, but every time that happened, the purple crystal would palpitate along with his heart, absorbing the energy in the world, nourishing Yi Yun's limbs and body along with his blood vessels. The sounds intensified as they increased in both amplitude and frequency. Yi Yun's body was drenched with sweat as he was on the verge of his limit. Boom! All of the sounds suddenly stopped. Yi Yun's sword came to a stop as he looked straight. At the tip of his sword, there was an esoteric circular pattern that was gradually revolving. So, with the sword tip stabbing at it, the circular pattern exploded. Beneath Yi Yun's feet, countless Tao patterns appeared as golden light circulated around him. Within the golden flames, Yi Yun felt like he was undergoing rebirth from the flames. A long screech came from behind him as the golden crow totem appeared, spreading its enormous golden wings apart. In the flames, Yi Yun's eyes seemed to have an additional hint of gold in them. The entire mental world apparently could not withstand his aura as it began to tremble. With a cracking sound, space was shattered as Yi Yun was sucked into the turbulence of time and space as he flowed along with it. Time passed as cultivation knew nothing of time. In the primordial space, Elder Duanmu and Elder Shi had once again appeared in front of the hall's door. A year's time was extremely short in the quiet and dead world. It was like a snap of the fingers. Chapter 955, The Competition for Disciplehood. In the vast cosmos, a spirit cruiser was mid-flight. The spirit cruiser had reached a nebulous zone before it was devoured by the sudden appearance of a black entrance. The ancient self-standing space inside the Black Entrance was where the core of the Oracle Fey Empire in the 10,000 Fey Empyrean Heaven was. Legends said that at the formation of the 10,000 Fey Empyrean Heaven, an ancient Fey had died, leaving behind the world that was in its body. After a long period of time, the world had transformed into a space. In the ancient space, there was a large floating island, with several small islands surrounding it. These islands were where people of high status lived in the Oracle Fey Empire. There were restrictive rings around the area, preventing people from approaching them. And on the large floating island, there was the vast and bustling Fey Empire. In the middle of the Fey Empire stood more than 10 large towers, with surging martial intent exuding from them. Qi Zhuoyun lived in one of the towers. Ever since he had lost to Yi Yun in the Luo clan, he had entered reclusion inside the tower. People would come to visit him, either to comfort him or to gloat, but Qi Zhuoyun did not meet them. Yu Tianfeng came to the tower's entrance and he transmitted his voice to the tightly closed door. Do you still plan on attaining a higher level of martial arts, or do you plan on always losing to Yi Yun? Just as Yu Tianfeng said this, the door opened. Qi Zhuoyun stood at the door and while looking at Yu Tianfeng, he said, Yi Yun is no longer my goal. My goal is my own martial path. He had thought through it. There were heavens beyond heavens, and people beyond people. Even if he did not lose to Yi Yun, he would have lost to someone else. Yu Tianfeng was surprised before he shook his head. I came to tell you that all hope isn't lost for you to become Felicitous Rain Lord's disciple. Qi Zhuoyun's expression changed. He no longer treated Yi Yun as his opponent, but he obviously still wanted to become a Divine Lord's disciple. That was his greatest regret. Felicitous Rain Lord is about to leave the Oracle Fey Empire. He has failed to recruit a personal disciple, but he has agreed to the Oracle Imperial Patriarch to expand his recruitment by taking in a few in-name disciples, said Yu Tianfeng. In-name disciples? Qi Zhuoyun's eyebrows pricked up. A Divine Lord might only have a few personal disciples, but in-name disciples could number in the hundreds or thousands. Divine Lords that lived especially long might even have in-name disciples who die of age, resulting in them having tens of thousands of in-name disciples in total. A person like Felicitous Rain Lord had only become a Divine Lord for tens of thousands of years, but the number of in-name disciples that he had was already in the dozens. Don't underestimate in-name disciples. A Divine Lord's in-name disciple is comparable to the top geniuses of a large faction. Furthermore, by working for a Divine Lord, their status would not be low. Most importantly, there is a chance of becoming a personal disciple by becoming an in-name disciple. Yu Tianfeng said as he could tell what was on Qi Zhuoyun's mind. A Divine Lord's personal disciple could sometimes be chosen from his in-name disciples. In the disciple recruitment this time, in-name disciples of Felicitous Rain Lord will be coming, so they can compete for a spot as a personal disciple, said Yu Tianfeng. Felicitous Rain Lord's choosing of personal disciples was done through a selection throughout the 10,000 Fey Empyrean Heaven. Therefore, his in-name disciples were naturally eligible to compete for it. A chance to become a personal disciple. Qi Zhuoyun's eyes lit up. It's not possible for the Imperial Patriarch to block the spread of the news, and now, there should be geniuses from various large factions coming here. However, with your strength, in addition to you having gained Felicitous Rain Lord's approval, it should not be a problem for you to become an in-name disciple. Yu Tianfeng still had a grudge with Yi Yun. Qi Zhuoyun had gained Felicitous Rain Lord's approval, and if not for Yi Yun's putting his foot out, causing Qi Zhuoyun to miss the chance of becoming a personal disciple, Qi Zhuoyun would not have to compete to become an in-name disciple. Now, with the 1 year finishing, the surprisingly difficult requirement was not something that Yi Yun could accomplish, even if he had 3 heads and 6 arms. It was not so simple to become a personal disciple of a Divine Lord. The news of Felicitous Rain Lord's recruiting in-name disciples quickly proliferated throughout the Alliance. In the coming days, there were spirit cruisers that constantly arrived at the ancient self-standing space. The capital of the Oracle Fey Empire was immediately where many geniuses gathered. There were geniuses from large factions who were gathered in the restaurants and tea shops every day. Yi Yun's name would be mentioned from time to time. Perhaps Yi Yun from the Luo clan might come as well. A warrior said. To compete for a spot as an in-name disciple? That's very possible. Another warrior said. They had heard that Fairy Ningxuan had listed the requirements on Felicitous Rainlord's behalf. The requirements were prohibitively difficult. Even a genius like Yi Yun could not meet the requirements. He has no chance of becoming a personal disciple, but the chance of becoming an in-name disciple obviously cannot be missed. If he comes, wouldn't our chances of becoming in-name disciples become slimmer? Another warrior shook his head with a wry smile. After coming, they realized that the spots as in-name disciples of the Divine Lord were also extremely sought after. Top geniuses had come, and even Qi Zhuiyun was participating in it. However, they did not leave either. Since they had already come, they might as well take the opportunity to watch the recruitment. It was possible for them to gain insights from the performance of top geniuses. The requirements that Fairy Ningxuan mentioned to become a personal disciple are impossible to complete. That's right. Even Yi Yun could, it's really too demanding. While these warriors were conversing, they suddenly heard a cold snort. A few frogs in a well. How can Martial Ant Ningxuan be maligned by people like you? This voice made the geniuses who were drinking wine frown. They were geniuses from various countries as well. So how could they be ridiculed? They immediately took an angry glance. The snort came from one of two black-robed warriors who wore jade bands on their heads. One of them had long hair, with two white horns on his head. He was sneering as he looked at the warriors. The warriors looked at them with frowns on their faces. It was unknown what faction those two people came from. The clothing that they wore was something the warriors failed to recognize. They could only see the profound patterns on the jade bands. Only shallow people will think that others can't accomplish what they can't do. The warrior with the horns on his head said with a tone of arrogance. Such impressive blowing of one's own trumpet, aren't you afraid that the wind will get too strong and cut your tongue? Try accomplishing it for me to see. Anger flashed on Warrior's face as he retorted. My senior brothers, Song Wuchen and Tian Sun, would be able to accomplish it. The warrior said lightly. Song Wuchen? Tian Sun? The warriors present looked at each other. They had never heard any of those names before. Junior brother Zhang, why do you bother to talk to them, said the warrior beside the horned warrior. At the recruitment meeting, they will naturally know that senior brother Song Wuchen would definitely be able to be promoted to a personal disciple. These people actually believe that martial ants requirements were given to Yi Yun, but Yi Yun is just the number one genius of a tiny country, so how can he be worthy to be given the requirement by her? Martial Ant Ningxuan's requirements were originally given to senior brothers Song Wuchen and Tian Sun. The two warriors continued to speak, completely ignoring the dirty looks from the other people in the restaurant. Let's go. It's just a bunch of people dreaming to ascend to the heavens in a single step. In my point of view, Yi Yun and Qi Zhuiyun can only barely become in-name disciple. They can forget about becoming a personal disciple. The youth who spoke left behind a relic and left. Promoted to a personal disciple? They called Fairy Ningxuan martial ant? Could they be Felicitous Rain Lord's in-name disciples? A warrior suddenly said in shock. After Felicitous Rain Lord came to the Oracle Fey Empire, he lived on one of the independent floating islands. There were heavy restrictions placed around it. But now, the recruitment meet was chosen to be held at the Oracle Fey Empire's capital to prevent the gathered geniuses from disturbing Felicitous Rainlord. The disciples that lived on the independent islands with Felicitous Rainlord naturally came to the royal capital as well. With that said, the two people were most likely Felicitous Rainlord's in-name disciples. The Song Wuchen they mentioned was likely one of Felicitous Rainlord's in-name disciples as well. These warriors quickly looked in the direction that the two had left in, but the two had taken 2 steps into the crowd before vanishing, with no traces of them being left behind. Chapter 956, Guivoisi. So, streams of light quickly vanished outside the cruiser's window, revealing a nebulous mist. This is the final spatial transference. The Oracle Fey Empire is in that nebulous region, Elder Duanmu said as he looked out of the window. Yi Yun nodded. He knew that the Oracle Fey Empire was located in an ancient self-standing space. And that space was in this region. They had rushed from the primordial Empyrean heaven, spending a great deal of time traveling. Before they left the primordial Empyrean heaven, they were informed about the event being held at the Oracle Fey Empire. Luo Hora did not wish to compete for a spot as an in-name disciple of a divine lord, but there were a few warriors from the Luo clan that headed to the Oracle Fey Empire. We managed to get here in time, Elder Shur said. He was a reticent person and he did not speak much on the journey from the primordial Empyrean heaven. Now, as he looked at the nebulous region outside, he reflected and said, "The last time I came to the Oracle Fey Empire was a few 100,000 years ago. I wonder if there will be a chance for me to step foot on this land the next time." A chance? Yi Yun was somewhat confused. Elder Duanmu said, "After he returns to the primordial Empyrean heaven this time, Elder Shur will be in reclusion to break through to become a supremacy. Accompanying you out here is a way to tie things up. He is trying to adjust his mind." Yi Yun understood everything from hearing this. Elder Shur was entering reclusion till his death. Elder Shur had been in reclusion in the primordial Empyrean heaven for hundreds of thousands of years in preparation for his breakthrough. Unfortunately, Elder Shur had failed to succeed. Senior Shur is planning on entering reclusion to his death? Yi Yun was somewhat puzzled. He was about to break through to the Dao Manifestation Realm soon, and after the Dao Manifestation Realm, it was the Dao Palace Realm. Above the Dao Palace Realm was the Realm of Supremacies. Elder Duanmu and Elder Shur were both in the Dao Palace Realm. It sounded like they were only 2 realms away from Yi Yun, but the Dao Palace Realm itself was highly disparate. Warriors at the same Dao Palace Realm could not be compared with each other at all. Warriors at the Dao Palace Realm were not demarcated with a beginning, middle, or late stage. Instead, they would establish a Dao Palace in their bodies, with floors as their goals. The highest floor that a Dao Palace could reach was 9 floors. If one had a 9-floor Dao Palace, it was almost certain that they would become a supremacy. Warriors with 8-floor Dao Palaces had lifespans that reached 8 million years. According to such a lifespan, Elder Shur was not considered to be too old. Yi Yun felt that Elder Shur did not need to be in such a hurry to enter reclusion to his death. At this moment, Elder Duanmu said, "Everyone's limit is different. Some people might only be able to construct a single-floor Dao Palace, but there are others who can construct a 9-floor Dao Palace. I have yet to reach my peak, but Elder Shur has already reached it. He has stopped at an 8-floor Dao Palace and he has not improved for hundreds of thousands of years. If it goes on, his strength will not only fail to improve, it would slowly go into a downtrend as a result of his age. And to break through to the realm of supremacies, everything has to reach the peak and proceed with the available momentum. It is extremely difficult to break through to the realm of supremacies with an 8-floor Dao Palace. It is a struggle with one's life. Upon failure, one would be reduced to dust. Therefore, there are some Dao Palace Realm warriors who know that by doing so means abandoning the path to go further, they would not dare to make the breakthrough. Elder Duanmu explained. On one side was a lifespan with 8 to 9 million years, while the other side was death upon failure. If a man in the morning hears the right way, he may die in the evening without regret. It was too difficult to become a supremacy. Yi Yun reflected upon this. At the same time, Yi Yun looked at Elder Shur and he felt like sighing. This elder, who looked high and mighty to the younger generation of Luo clan disciples, was facing the hard choice of life and death. On the path in pursuit of the peak of martial arts, he was equally tiny. And this time, Supremacy Gulen was accompanying them as well. Although he had become a supremacy, there was a large rift that separated him from a divine lord. The entire Luo clan had not produced a divine lord in hundreds of millions of years. It was obvious how hard it was to become a divine lord. As Yi Yun thought about this, a sense of grave danger suddenly enveloped him. It was like a dark shadow had been cast on his mind. Sweat inexplicably oozed out of Yi Yun's back. What happened? Yi Yun spread his perception out and he noticed that silently in the nebulous mist around his surroundings, a black hand had stretched out, grabbing at the spirit cruiser. This large hand shuttled through the stars and it was even able to mask the luster of the starlight on the spirit cruiser. Such terrifying power could instantly crush the spirit cruiser into pieces with a grab. Yi Yun, who was inside the spirit cruiser, had already seen the large hand. The large hand gave him an overwhelming feeling that he could not resist. Who? A black hand had sealed the space around them, isolating them from the world around them. The isolated space seemed to be shattering. This grab would not only shatter the spirit cruiser, it would even cause the space to explode as well. Not only Yi Yun himself, even Elder Duanmu and Elder Shi, who were beside Yi Yun, had a drastic change in expression. Even they could not withstand this strike. At that moment, Yi Yun felt a strong sense of fatal danger. At this point, the bow of the spirit cruiser was covered in a brilliance of light. Simultaneously, a figure flew out of the bow. He was dressed in azure-colored clothes and he held a broadsword. He slashed down at the large hand. Bam! The hand quaked as it disintegrated partially in the void. But very soon, it returned to its normal state. Its fingers moved lightly, drawing out a symbol of a phantasm, sealing the space firmly. Gue Huazi. The azure-clothed figure stood with the sword in his hand as his body exuded a terrifying aura. His brow wrinkled. From the nebula came a sinister-sounding voice. Gulen, it's been a while. The sword-wielding figure was naturally Supremacy Gulen. To traverse the primordial Empyrean heaven, a supremacy was needed to power the spirit cruiser. And since Yi Yun was coming to the Oracle Fey Empire, Supremacy Gulen had accompanied Yi Yun. After all, there was a fear of accidents for such a long journey. And now, an accident had really happened. Gue Huazi was a supremacy from the Fey Phantasm sect. Supremacy Gulen said with a cold voice, Gue Huazi, as a supremacy, you actually want to assassinate a junior? Are you only worth that much? Gue Huazi did not respond to Supremacy Gulen's ridicule. The nebulous gases stirred as the large black hand vanished. A gray and thin figure slowly emerged. He had 6 arms that hung softly from his body. His body was bent and he looked extremely weird. His pupils were green as his eyes penetrated the spirit cruiser and his gaze landed directly on Yi Yun. Yi Yun immediately felt like he had fallen into an ice cavern. The gaze was like a dark hole that would devour him. Not bad. Much better than those disciples from the Cloud Trail Empire. His mind is pretty strong as well? Very good. His soul shall be devoured by me. It would definitely be a delicious tonic. When Yi Yun heard Gue Huazi's voice, it was echoing in his mind like a demon's whisper. He was someone from the Fey Phantasm sect, here to assassinate him. Previously, they had killed all the Cloud Trail Empire geniuses who were undertaking the trials. Now, he was being targeted. A supremacy of a faction would consider their reputation, and they would not attack juniors. However, supremacies of the Fey Phantasm sect would not consider this at all. Gue Huazi may not be able to kill Supremacy Gulen, but if he wanted to kill Yi Yun, it would be much simpler. After all, it was much easier to kill than to protect. Chapter 957, Cutting the Weeds and Digging Up the Roots. Gulen, you haven't improved in all these years. I failed to behead you in our last battle, but today, I'll kill you as well. Gue Huazi said coldly. Preposterous. Supremacy Gulen thrust his sword out as the two supremacies engaged in an intense battle. This was a battle that completely exceeded Yi Yun's realm. The battle of the two supremacies created an independent space. The Dao domain of supremacies already formed nomological worlds. A battle created a world. Gue Huazi attacked with all his strength, but Supremacy Gulen had to protect the spirit cruiser. Supremacy Gulen and Supremacy Gue Huazi were close in strength. In order to protect Yi Yun, Supremacy Gulen was heavily restricted. As things went on, Supremacy Gulen was quickly repressed and he was in a disadvantageous position. This is the territory of the Alliance and the entrance to the Oracle Fey Empire. Gue Huazi can't engage in battle for too long. He will leave very soon. Elder Duanmu said as beads of sweat oozed off his forehead. Yi Yun was in their hands, and not a single blunder was allowed. They watched as the two supremacies battled, but they did not leave Yi Yun's side. They were no help in a battle between supremacies. By staying beside Yi Yun, they could withstand any periphery aftershocks from the battle so they could protect Yi Yun. But at this moment, there was a sudden spatial fluctuation, giving the world that they were in a strong sense of oppression. Yi Yun felt a strong sense of danger once again. As for Elder Shi, his heart tightened and his expression changed drastically. Careful! Elder Shi smacked out with his palm, like he did not use any strength. But in front of Yi Yun, there was a microworld that suddenly appeared. There were living creatures in it, with lush forests and tiny river streams. It was bustling with life. This was Elder Shi's Dao domain. Although he had yet to condense nomological worlds, he had already attained the second realm of a Dao domain, Great Dao. However, when the shockwave struck the microcosm, Yi Yun watched as the biological beings in the world began to wither and die quickly. Elder Shi's body convulsed as his face went pale and his blood drained from his face. Who is it? Elder Shi was appalled. Gue Huazi was still fighting Supremacy Gulen, so it was not Gue Huazi's attack. It was from someone else. For a person to be able to easily destroy his Dao domain, severely injuring him, it was most likely another supremacy. Two supremacies in an assassination attempt. Elder Shi's heart sank. He never expected that Yi Yun would be targeted by the Fey Phantasm sect in such a manner. Did they need to go that far? He was just a junior. Even with the title of the #1 genius of the Luo clan, there was no need to go so far. They previously believed that it would be enough to protect Yi Yun with Supremacy Gulen, along with Elder Shi and Elder Duanmu. There were few supremacies in the Luo clan to begin with. Other than those in reclusion, sending a supremacy to protect Yi Yun was already the limit. After all, the Luo clan royal capital also required supremacies to guard it. The Luo clan never expected that the Fey Phantasm sect would send such a large killing squad. A supremacy was not even enough to protect Yi Yun. 8th floor Dao Palace? You aren't young, and you have expended your potential. Your obstruction is nothing in front of me. With an indifferent voice echoing, a pure white figure appeared in the void. The white figure neither looked male nor female. The figure's facial features were blurred, resembling a ghost. Daoist Yu Ming. Shit, junior brother, combine forces with me. Elder Shi turned extremely nervous. There was Gue Huazi and another, Daoist Yu Ming. Elder Duanmu and Elder Shi were both Dao Palace realm warriors, but their combined forces was still not enough for them to be an obstruction for Daoist Yu Ming. Since both of you yearn death, I shall fulfill your wishes. Fei Hua, I'll leave that junior to you. The white figure said. At that moment, a young man dressed in a crimson-colored robe walked out from the white figure. He had delicate features and he exuded a soft and effeminate aura. Yes, father. The effeminate man said. His tone had a hint of disdain. He had accompanied his father to watch a battle between supremacies and he hoped to gain insights from it. Now, he had to kill Yi Yun, a task that was to be done as a matter of convenience. His cultivation level was at the 6th floor Dao Palace realm. Killing a Heaven Ascension realm warrior was as easy as slaughtering chickens. Having a 6th floor Dao Palace meant that he was on the same level as Elder Duanmu. If he fought Yi Yun, it was simply incomparable. 2 supremacies and a 6th floor Dao Palace warrior. Yi Yun felt his body be constricted. Yi Yun did not have very deep feelings for the enemy known as the Fey Phantasm sect, but today he had encountered them for the first time. They were perverse opponents. He had yet to form a vendetta with the Fey Phantasm sect, but they were planning to nip all possible threats in the bud. A super sect, whose strength went far beyond the Luo clan, did things meticulously by cutting the weeds and digging up the roots as well. They showed no mercy, so it was no wonder that despite the Fey Phantasm sect being up to all kinds of evil, they still managed to remain steadfast in the 10,000 Fey Empyrean heaven for so many years. At this moment, the white figure had attacked. He stretched his hand out and waved it. A profound seal appeared in his hand as it flew at Eldershire. Boom! A terrifying shockwave immediately blasted at the 2 elders, who bellowed loudly. They burnt their blood essences as they combined forces to face the attack. They were out of options. Even if they burnt their blood essence, they were still no match for a supremacy. At this moment, Yu Feihua looked at Yi Yun. He touched the void in front of him and immediately, a Guqin appeared and floated in front of him. The Guqin exuded a strange aura. As Yu Feihua's fingers flicked the Guqin gently, it made sounds, sending sound waves out, immediately making Yi Yun's blood surge wantonly. Music was the style of a gentleman, but this warrior gave one a very sinister feeling. The strum of the Guqin sent sound waves that were mingled with the sound of wailing ghosts. Vanquishing you in one strike. Yu Feihua's voice was cold and indifferent. His fingers strummed against the strings of the Guqin and immediately, a sharp sound of the Guqin resounded as a dark shadow appeared in the sound wave. The ferocious and pained face opened its mouth as it grabbed at Yi Yun with its sharp claws. It was like the wraith shadow was about to grab at Yi Yun's soul. What seemed like a casual strike was actually one of Yu Feihua's proficient moves, God Vanquishing Sound. Even Elder Duanmu would have to carefully withstand it. Yu Feihua had a 6th floor Dao Palace cultivation level. Against a junior at the Heaven Ascension Perfection realm, it would be an easy task to do anything to him. But in order to quickly settle the problem, he immediately used God Vanquishing Sound. He did so to waste little time, so that he could finish the deed before the arrival of the people from the Oracle Fey Empire. The Wraith Shadow's attack immediately made Yi Yun feel that his life was being threatened. It was like his throat was being held and he was quickly being suffocated. He would die. Yi Yun felt that the Wraith Shadow was something difficult to withstand. Be it Supremacy Gulen or the 2 elders, they were completely embroiled in their battles with the Fey Phantasm sect supremacies. They could not rescue him. This was the greatest crisis that Yi Yun had ever faced ever since he came to the 10,000 Fey Empyrean heaven. There was no way for him to block against such a move. With his life on the line, Yi Yun did not resist the strike head-on. He immediately summoned the Draco First True Gold Avatar as it charged at the ghastly shadow. Sha! 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 999,000 snow-flying sabers flew out. But at that second, the flying sabers were defiled by the Wraith Shadow, losing a great deal of their agility. The Wraith Shadow rushed straight into the Draco First True Gold Avatar. Branched Soul, return. Yi Yun decisively pulled his Draco First True Gold Avatar's branched soul back. At that moment, the Draco First True Gold Avatar was trembling violently. It could not resist the attack at all. Oh? An avatar? Yu Feihua was slightly surprised, but he did not mind it. The God Vanquishing Sound from his heavenly Wraith Guqin could vanquish any target with life in it. By using his avatar to attract the attention of the Sonic Wraith, Yi Yun had managed to escape the crisis, but there was no way to avoid it again. Just as Yu Feihua was about to use the God Vanquishing Sound again, there was a divine beam that flashed in the distance. Someone was coming. People from the Oracle Fey Empire? It was wartime now. The Oracle Fey Empire's level of alertness was extremely high, and with the Fey Phantasm sect appearing at their country's doorstep, they naturally discovered it very quickly. They came so fast. Daoist Yu Ming frowned. Although he knew that carrying out an assassination at the doorstep to the country would result in gaining the attention of the Oracle Fey Empire, they could only do so. This was because they could only be certain that the entrance to the Oracle Fey Empire was where Yun would have to pass on his trip to the Oracle Fey Empire. Fei Hua, come back. Daoist Yu Ming no longer needed Fei Hua to attack. He did not wish to stay long in the Oracle Fey Empire. After all, Felicitous Rain Lord was residing in the Oracle Fey Empire. Of course, Felicitous Rain Lord was located very far away. He would not notice the battle here immediately, but it was unknown what tricks a Divine Lord had up his sleeve. If they stayed in the area any longer, they would definitely die here if Felicitous Rain Lord were to appear here. In order to end the battle quickly to ensure no mistakes, Daoist Yu Ming decided on attacking himself. At this moment, Elder Duanmu and Elder Shi had already been severely injured by Daoist Yu Ming. Especially Elder Shi, his face was pale and he was bleeding from all 7 orifices. He was barely alive, so they could no longer stop Daoist Yu Ming. Daoist Yu Ming beckoned his hand in the void, and in a distance, a tiny star vibrated gently because of Daoist Yu Ming's summoning. The energy essence from the star was induced by Daoist Yu Ming through such a move, and had large amounts of energy extracted from it. A nonchalant wave of the hand extracted the power of stars. Yi Yun's body was ice cold. At this moment, Daoist Yu Ming's attack was aimed at Yi Yun. A strike that contained the power of stars. Boom! The spirit cruiser that Yi Yun was in began to shatter. Although the spirit cruiser was a national treasure of the Luo clan, it was still a spirit cruiser after all. It was only used to travel through space, a tool for motion. So how could it withstand the blow from a supremacy? Ka-cha! The spirit cruiser exploded, breaking into fragments in the storm. And spatial chaos immediately surged out, merging with the power of the stars, resulting in a fierce explosion. Such a terrifying strike would instantly kill even an 8th-floor Dao Palace Realm Warrior. There was no need to even talk about a Heaven Ascension Realm Warrior. He would definitely be reduced to smithereens. Yi Yun! Elder Duanmu and Elder Shi's eyes turned red. All these years, Yi Yun had been in reclusion in the primordial space. They already treated Yi Yun as half a disciple and they were desperately fighting to protect him. Even if Yi Yun could not become a Divine Lord's disciple in the future, he would definitely become a mighty figure of the Luo clan, or he might even become a spiritual leader of the Luo clan disciples, but now, everything was gone. Let's go! Daoist Yu Ming flicked his sleeves and took Yu Fei Hua away. As for Gue Huazi, he used a move to send Supremacy Gulan retreating. The 2 supremacies tore through the void and entered it, vanishing from the area. This was the power of supremacies. They could come in and leave the entrance to an empire as they wished. Only at this moment did the people from the Oracle Fey Empire arrive. In front of them, there was only a shattered void, as well as the debris of. Chapter 958, Surprises at Every Bend. As he looked at the shattered spirit cruiser, Supremacy Gulan's expression was extremely ugly. The 3rd Imperial Uncle had assigned him a task to protect Yi Yun from any harm. Furthermore, it was already unprecedented for a supremacy to protect a Heaven Ascension Realm Junior, but even so, something untoward had happened. The main reason was the mightiness of the Fey Phantasm sect. The Luo clan's supremacies could be counted with one's fingers, while the Fey Phantasm sect's supremacies that the Luo clan knew about numbered approximately 15. There were others that the Luo clan did not even know about at all. The Fey Phantasm sect could easily send 2 supremacies to assassinate Yi Yun, while the Luo clan's supremacies had to stay behind to protect the royal capital. Supremacy Gulan felt ashamed to return to the Luo clan. Just as he felt disheartened, he suddenly sensed something. He was surprised to discover that in the chaotic spatial storms, there was a bright glimmer of light floating about. It seemed like it was about to be sucked into the spatial turbulence. This is... Supremacy Gulen had his hopes lifted as he suddenly took a step forward to grasp the glimmer of light. The point of light flew over, and it was a small pagoda tower. The small tower was about 2 inches tall, and it shimmered with a dark golden sheen. It was obvious that it was an extraordinary item. It was the Supremacy's attack, but the tower was not destroyed? Could it be? Supremacy Gulen held his breath, and at that moment, a weak beam of light flew out of the tower. As it spun in the air, it finally took on the form of Yi Yun. His face was pale and his body was drenched in sweat. As for the tower, it flew into Yi Yun's body at that moment and vanished. What a close call! He had been tethering on the brink of life and death. Yi Yun's energy was all depleted and he had suffered a huge lose in lifeblood. But at that critical juncture, he used the God Advent Tower to withstand Daoist Yu Ming's final strike. A Supremacy's attack was extremely horrifying. Even if Yi Yun had broken through another major cultivation realm, he would not be able to withstand it, much less his present self. Thankfully, he had the God Advent Tower. Ever since he came to the 12 Empyrean Heavens, Yi Yun had never used the God Advent Tower. After all, the God Advent Tower was a legacy item of the Azure Yang Lord. A legacy item of a divine lord was obviously extraordinary in power. Unfortunately, the God Advent Tower was not powered by a divine lord. With Yi Yun's present strength, the power that the God Advent Tower could use was greatly limited with his control. Thankfully, the God Advent Tower had a protective array with it. Back in the lower realm, these arrays were unable to show their effectiveness due to the lack of energy. And upon coming to the 12 Empyrean Heavens, with the availability of a large number of world stones as an energy source, Yi Yun had long recharged the God Advent Tower's arrays to their maximum. The strike from Daoist Yu Ming had nearly depleted all of the stored energy in the God Advent Tower's defensive arrays. In one breath, he had burned nearly 200,000 world stones. Thankfully, Yi Yun was wealthy. Disregarding everything else, just the gifts that were sent to his Viscount residence after he defeated Qi Zhuiyun had given him a great deal of wealth. Without mentioning the relics and other treasures, he received about 800,000 to 900,000 world stones. And amongst them, there were quite a number of superior world stones. Yi Yun did not think that the gifts would play an important role, and with more world stones, they were just a number. However, he never expected that the gifts were able to save him at that moment in time. Indeed, it was best to have more wealth. Yi Yun felt a lingering fear. Thanks to a treasure like the God Advent Tower and his massive wealth, he had managed to survive an attack of a Supremacy. Yi Yun, are you alright? Supremacy Gulen did not ask further as he reached his hand out to feel Yi Yun's meridians and sent pulses of energy to probe Yi Yun's body to examine him thoroughly. When he realized that Yi Yun was fine other than being severely drained of his energy, he heaved a sigh of relief. But at the same time, he gave Yi Yun an incredulous look. He knew that Yi Yun's survival was not because of his own strength, but because of that tiny tower. That tiny tower was so impressive? Just from the looks of it, Supremacy Gulen could not glean the history of the God Advent Tower that had been shrunk an unknown number of times. After all, the Azure Yang Lord was a figure that existed about 40 to 50 million years ago. When the Azure Yang Lord reigned in the Yang God Empyrean Heaven, Supremacy Gulen's great-grandfather had yet to be born. In addition to the Yang God Empyrean Heaven being so far from the 10,000 Fei Empyrean Heaven, Supremacy Gulen obviously could not recognize the God Advent Tower, even if he was very knowledgeable. However, there was no doubt in the God Advent Tower's value. Elder Shur, Elder Duanmu, how are the both of you? Supremacy Gulen looked at the two Luo Divine Hall elders that had been severely injured by Daoist Yu Ming. After he verified that Yi Yun was fine, Supremacy Gulen went to treat the two elders' injuries. I won't die. Elder Shur waved his hand. However, as he spoke, blood seeped out from the corners of his mouth. You burned your blood essence. Even your meridians are damaged. Supremacy Gulen frowned. The two elders, especially Elder Shur, were severely injured. Taoist Yu Ming's attacks were extremely vicious. His attacks could drain his opponents of their lifeblood, and with Elder Shur burning his blood essence and having his lifeblood drained, he was immediately feeling a deficit of energy and blood. There was no other way. If I didn't burn my blood essence, I probably wouldn't even last a few seconds. Elder Shur said with a wry smile. He indulged in self-mockery. I'm getting old and I am on a decline. I'm getting more and more useless. Senior Shur. Yun's voice sounded guilt-stricken. If not for him, would Elder Shur be in such a state? And Elder Duanmu had mentioned that Elder Shur had came out to regulate his mood and mind. Elder Shur was about to enter reclusion to his death, and with the hopes of him breaking through to become a supremacy being slim already, now with the current situation of him suffering a deficit in lifeblood, the chances of him breaking through to become a supremacy by entering a death reclusion were even slimmer. It's fine. A warrior's cultivation depends on himself, but success or failure depends on the heavens. Regardless of the outcome, it's my choice. If it is really impossible, I will choose to give up. Elder Shur sighed. He knew that if he continued to forcefully stay in reclusion, the chances of succeeding in becoming a supremacy were extremely low. However, he would feel indignant if he did not attempt it. Yun fell silent. He no longer spoke as he looked at Elder Shur. There was no way to express his gratitude towards such a large matter. Yun took a note of the two elders who had risked their lives to save him. In his lifetime, he would definitely repay the debt. If he really became a peerless warrior, he could even help Elder Duanmu and Elder Shur become supremacies. At this moment, Shoo! 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 The people from the Oracle Fey Empire arrived. They were previously situated very far away, and with the energy storms distorting space, they were only vaguely aware of what had happened. They were extremely astonished to see that Yun had managed to survive an attack of a supremacy. Was it a life-protecting charm? A number of them had seen Yun and Shijueyun's battle. They knew that Yun had once used a broken sword in that battle, and that broken sword was an impressive treasure. Yun. Elder Shur coughed as he wiped his mouth. His voice sounded old and hoarse. You have revealed some of your treasures this time. In the Luo clan, the third imperial uncle and His Majesty, Emperor Luo, would give you their backing, so no one would snatch your opportunities. But when you are away from the Luo clan, you have to be careful. However, it's thankful that it wouldn't be a problem for you to become Felicitas Reign Lord Xin-named disciple this time at the Oracle Fey Empire. Once you become a Divine Lord Xin-named disciple, no one will have their sights on you. Elder Shur was very curious about the tower's history, but he did not probe any further. The tower was extraordinary. Thankfully, it was only an artifact. To supremacies, the most valuable treasures were ones that directly augmented themselves, such as top cultivation techniques, ancient Fey bones, or treasures that extended their lives. External items like weapons and artifacts were not enough to make supremacies go crazy for them. In fact, even if Yun had acquired an impressive legacy, and for him to walk this far with his own strength was already amazing. Only a genius with Providence shining down on him could mature. Without enough of Providence's grace, not only would there be a lack of opportunities, just one's growth process might be cut short with death. Chapter 959, The event begins. The news of Yun being attacked by Fey Phantasm sect supremacies at the entrance to the Oracle Fey Kingdom quickly proliferated throughout the alliance. The two Fey Phantasm sect supremacies, as well as Taoist Yu Ming's son, Yu Feihua, quickly received the news not long after they left the Oracle Fey Kingdom. What? That punk didn't die? Impossible. Taoist Yu Ming was the one who had personally dealt the strike. He knew the power of that one strike very well, so how did Yun survive? That is the fact. Now, Iyun is still all fine and dandy in the Oracle Fey Kingdom. Felicitous Rain Lord's recruitment meet for an unnamed disciple will soon proceed. Iyun would likely not be absent. If you don't believe, you can always make a visit and also revel in the magnificence of Felicitous Rain Lord's disciple recruitment drive. Beside Taoist Yu Ming, Gue Huazi said in a queer manner. Although he frequently worked with Taoist Yu Ming, they often threw snide remarks at each other. Their relationship wasn't harmonious. Taoist Yu Ming's face sank. He would not dare to go to the meet where Felicitous Rain Lord was taking in a disciple, even if he had an additional life. Gue Huazi was just poking fun at him. It was humiliating to fail to kill a junior in one strike as a supremacy. I'll finish that, Iyun. Ha! You speak so lightly of it. If he were to become an unnamed disciple of Felicitous Rain Lord, would you dare to touch him? Gue Huazi quipped sarcastically. Even an unnamed disciple of a divine lord represented a divine lord's honor. If one were to rashly kill a divine lord's unnamed disciple, it was very likely that the divine lord would get revenge for their disciple. Taoist Yu Ming could not afford the risk. So what if he's Felicitous Rain Lord's unnamed disciple? There are other methods to kill Iyun, as long as Felicitous Rain Lord doesn't realize that it was done by me. Taoist Yu Ming said in a cold voice as his eyes flashed with killing intent. At this moment, in the Oracle Fey Kingdom's capital, Iyun's name had once again caused quite a stir. After all, Iyun was a person who had defeated Qi Zhueyun. He garnered a great deal of attention in the Oracle Fey Kingdom. He actually managed to survive a strike from a supremacy? In the brocade spring court of the Oracle Fey Kingdom's capital, a youth dressed in a black robe was playing the zither. A tune like flowing water was being played. After hearing the news, the zither music slowly turned silent. But immediately after this, he shook his head and said, "It's impossible for a Heaven Ascension Realm warrior to withstand a strike from a supremacy." Ignoring the Heaven Ascension Realm, even a peerless genius at the Tao Manifestation Perfection Realm would definitely die. That Iyun must have had some life-saving means, such as an extremely valuable protective charm in order to survive. The youth dressed in the black robe was one of the top unnamed disciples of Felicitous Rain Lord, Song Wuchen. This ranking was not a ranking of strength, it was a ranking of talent and opinion. Song Wuchen's cultivation level had already broken into the Tao Manifestation Realm. Amongst Felicitous Rain Lord's unnamed disciples, his cultivation level was considered low. But typically, the number of unnamed disciples that could meet Felicitous Rain Lord at any time numbered 2. Song Wuchen was one of them. So it's a protective charm. That wouldn't mean anything. In front of Song Wuchen, there were 2 other unnamed disciples of Felicitous Rain Lord. They were the 2 who had argued with those warriors in the restaurant previously. Their names were Feng Zhang and Feng Qi. They were not brothers, but their identical surnames was a result of them coming from the same family clan. They had vague notions of people like Iyun and Qi Zhueyun to begin with. It was only recently that they heard about their stories. For instance, just not long ago, they had heard how Iyun was being assassinated by Fey Phantasm sect supremacies and how he finally managed to escape. They were astonished, so they came to report it to Song Wuchen. "I heard that Iyun is a warrior from the lower realm. How did he have such a valuable protective charm?" Feng Zhang said unhappily. "He came from a major faction, but a poor rascal like Iyun had things that were much better than his." Song Wuchen said, "He must have his own opportunities, but for such opportunities to have supported his growth up to this point, it is likely that they have been mostly depleted. Now, it's most likely that Iyun wants to become Master's unnamed disciple for the resources provided by Master." As Song Wuchen said this, Feng Qi and Feng Zhang naturally did not feel happy. As disciples of Felicitous Rain Lord, they obviously wished that there were fewer fellow disciples. That way, the amount of resources they were be allocated would be a greater amount of the resources available. "Senior Brother Wuchen, you are the examiner for the unnamed disciple test, right?" "That's right, I'm just one of the examiners. Senior brother Wuchen, you must be strict. It's best if that motley crew is barred from becoming our fellow disciples. Feng Zhang said. Actually, if it was possible, he did not even wish that there would even be an additional disciple. It was best if they were all eliminated. However, he knew that people like Shi Zhuiyun and Yi Yun were exceptional. It was very likely that they would become in-name disciples. Song Wuchen lightly pondered before saying, if his qualifications really make the cut and pass my test, I will give him a chance. All right. Senior brother Wuchen is truly fair. Feng Zhang and Feng Qi exchanged some niceties before leaving. Song Wuchen put his zither away. There are so many people trying to become master's in-name disciple again. Song Wuchen frowned. All of the years that he had been an in-name disciple, he had always been hoping to become Felicitous Rain Lord's personal disciple, but he had failed to gain Felicitous Rain Lord's approval. Although he was still a distance away from becoming Felicitous Rain Lord's personal disciple, by being one of the top in-name disciples, the resources that he enjoyed was also the best provided by Felicitous Rain Lord. He did not wish for anyone to threaten his position. A person like Tiansun already pissed him off greatly. If there were other people, the room for his growth would be further suppressed. Song Wuchen did not show it over the past few years, but he was a person with ambition. He believed that when he was constantly ranked first amongst the in-name disciples, there would be a day when he would become Felicitous Rain Lord's personal disciple if Felicitous Rain Lord failed to find a personal disciple that he found suitable. Shi Zhuiyun. Yi Yun. You want to get a piece of this, then let's see if you can complete my test. Song Wuchen muttered to himself as he flew away. 10 days later, in the Oracle Fei Kingdom's Brocade Spring Court, the event began. Felicitous Rain Lord's recruitment of in-name disciples. Brocade Spring Court was originally one of the venues that hosted the grandest events in the Oracle Fei Kingdom. And for Felicitous Rain Lord's disciple recruitment, it was even hosted by the country's king. Having the head of the country host this grand event and Shui Ningxuang being in attendance, the lineup was enough to stir the minds of the elites from various countries. However, it was unfortunate that Felicitous Rain Lord did not appear. What a pity to not be able to see Felicitous Rain Lord. A young genius said in dismay. To people like him, it was impossible to even hope. They were just here to take a look. It's normal to not even see him. Felicitous Rain Lord's recruitment of an in-name disciple might not mean that he would personally give them pointers. Only a few of the top disciples might obtain the true teachings of Felicitous Rain Lord. Now, it's already sufficient to have Fairy Ningxuang manage the recruitment of in-name disciples. Furthermore, I heard that 2 of the examiners are Song Wuchen and Tiansun, 2 of the best in-name disciples. I wonder what their tests will be. Chapter 960, No Test of Actual Combat. Song Wuchen? Tiansun? Letting in-name disciples test us? Outside Brocade Spring Court, a few young geniuses were displeased hearing this. Felicitous Rain Lord's absence was understandable, but who the hell were Song Wuchen and Tiansun? Weren't they also juniors from the younger generation? At best, they would be an entire realm higher than them, yet they had the qualifications to test them? I would like to see what sort of tests would one need to take to become Felicitous Rain Lord's in-name disciple. Many young geniuses were discontented regarding this matter. As they conversed with each other, they walked through Brocade Spring Court's gates. The Brocade Spring Court covered an area of 100 square miles, and it was like a spirit forest. There were all sorts of spirit trees, assorted flowers, and treasured materials, each numerous in number. And the number of people that came for this grand event was estimated to be 70 to 80,000 people. Most of the people were only there to join in the bustle, and quite a number of people were elders that were there to watch the performances of their juniors. However, even after taking these people out, the number of people who had decided to participate in the in-name disciple assessment was still way too many, a number close to 10,000 people. Why are there so many people? Upon seeing the crowd, Iyun was quite taken aback. He even saw a little girl that did not look like she was 20 years of age. Certain members of the Fey race had slower growth by nature, just like Donger. They would still look like a 10-year-old in their teens. Even such a young girl wanted to become an in-name disciple of Felicitas Rainlord? The in-name disciple assessment does not even have an initial threshold from the beginning, so it's obvious that there would be many participants. Many people are only here to join in the bustle or using it as an experience or trial as part of their martial path. They have no chance of becoming Felicitas Rainlord's in-name disciple. The number of people that are of true worth can be counted with one's fingers. The ones that could really be considered as geniuses in the Alliance were not commonplace after all, so it was obvious that it should not have reached such massive numbers. Just as Iyun walked into Brocade Spring Court, a faint perceptive sense brushed past the purple crystal, causing the purple crystal to palpitate slightly. Iyun was slightly surprised, but he did not know what had just happened. Ningxuan, is he the Iyun you mentioned? At this moment, on a floating island above the Oracle Fey Kingdom, there was a pavilion sitting on top of a deep blue lake. An azure-clothed white-haired middle-aged man sat in front of a stone table, and he was playing Go with a woman. The white-haired man had a pair of purplish-red-colored eyes. In his pupils, it reflected a universe. It was a world with stars that were born and destroyed in that universe. The man was Felicitas Rainlord, who had obtained the Divine Lord Royal Seal in the past tens of thousands of years. And the woman he was facing was Shui Ningxuan, a person who he had once saved and has always followed him by his side. Felicitas Rainlord did not attend the Brocade Spring Courts event, but with his perception, a simple sweep of it allowed him to know everything at his fingertips. Yes, it's him. A year ago, Qi Zhuoyan went to the Luo clan and he challenged everyone, but he was trounced by Iyun. In terms of combat strength, that child should be the strongest person in the Alliance. Combat strength is not everything, the white-haired man said leisurely. He did not care about the title of being first in the Alliance. The Alliance was only the coalition of 6 factions. And among the 6 factions, there was not a single faction with a Divine Lord. Every 100 years, an alliance would give birth to the strongest person amongst the younger generation, and this so-called strongest person did not really have any weight to it. However, that Iyun is indeed interesting. Even if he's not qualified to cultivate the 10,000 Fey Divine Canon, I can still nurture him well. Felicitas Rainlord said as he lightly placed down a piece. Shui Ningxuan was somewhat astonished, for she never expected that Felicitas Rainlord, who always appeared to be indifferent to things around him, had such a high opinion of Iyun. She got up and said, "Then, I shall take my leave first." The event still needed Shui Ningxuan to preside over it personally. There's no need for that. Just stay here and watch it with me. Felicitas Rainlord said nonchalantly as Shui Ningxuan was taken aback, before she sat back down. At this moment, Brocade Spring Court was already extremely crowded. People darted through the spiritual plantation, waiting for the start of the event. In the middle of Brocade Spring Court, there was a towering tree. It was almost 10 miles high, as its crown pierced through the clouds. And its trunk had the circumference of the combined armspan of 100 people. It was rumored that the gigantic tree was planted at the founding of the Oracle Fey Kingdom, so it had already been growing for 80 million years. Around the towering tree, there were floating houses. Song Wuchen, Tiansun, and the Oracle Fey Kingdom's king and ministers, as well as members of the upper echelons of various major factions, such as Elder Duanmu and Elder Shi, were sitting in the floating houses, overlooking the tens of thousands of warriors beneath them. At this moment, Song Wuchen had the pleasurable feeling that he had control over tens of thousands of warriors. After all, many of the rules for the test were decided by Song Wuchen. I believe it's about time, with most of the people being here. The king of the Oracle Fey Kingdom said. Song Wuchen looked at the tens of thousands of warriors and he wrapped up his thoughts. He said with a gentle smile, "If that's the case, let's begin." As he said that, Song Wuchen stood up and he went next to a railing beside the floating hall. Silence. Song Wuchen's voice wasn't loud, but it immediately spread through the entire Brocade Spring Court. The warriors, who came to participate in the unnamed disciple selection, immediately looked up at him. Who is that? People had never seen the young and elegant man, but they could guess his identity. Everyone, I'm Song Wuchen. I'm here on behalf of my master to preside over the selection of unnamed disciples. As Song Wuchen spoke, he scanned the warriors beneath him. Other than most of the people that were here just for an experience, with no hopes of becoming Felicitas Rainlord's disciple, there was a small group of people in front of the crowd that made him take a few additional glances. Amongst them was Yi Yun, Shi Zhuiyun, and Tian Yahua, the cream of the crop of the alliance. Other than these geniuses from various factions that everyone was familiar with, there were two unfamiliar faces. One of them was thin and had pale skin, giving him a sinister look. Another one was short and fat, but he looked harmless in nature. Very few knew who the two were. When Song Wuchen saw Yi Yun, his good mood turned for the worse. Just a while ago, he had received Shui Ningxuan's long-distance voice transmission to focus his assessment on Yi Yun. Yi Yun was apparently highly valued by Shui Ningxuan, so how could Song Wuchen feel happy about that? He began to feel a threat from Yi Yun. If Yi Yun became an unnamed disciple, it was likely that Yi Yun would slowly threaten his position. For the assessment, the proportion for actual combat will be tiny. There will not be any 1-versus-1 duels. Song Wuchen's first sentence caught many people by surprise. To warriors, the most intuitive method of comparing strength was one's combat strength, but Song Wuchen said that there would not be any duels. Many people immediately looked at Yi Yun. They knew that Yi Yun was best at actual combat. Yi Yun's Dao domain was very weak, or at least a year ago, he did not have a Dao domain. Yet, Yi Yun was able to defeat Shi Zhuiyun without a Dao domain, relying on his terrifying combat strength.